The King of Podcasts Radio Network proudly presents the Broadcasters Podcast, where we dive deep into the media industry headlines and dissect the digital disruption that diverges the masses into the new media counterculture and away from the media establishment. Here is the King of Podcasts.
Here we are, another Broadcasters Podcast. This is King of Podcasts, and I hope, if you haven't done so, if you're watching the show, please like, share, subscribe, all the playlists. You should always find new episodes right here. Plus, there's other episodes on my main channel here on the YouTube. The audio version of the podcast is also out there for you. Starts off at broadcasterspodcast.com, and you can find this show on Apple, Amazon, Spotify, Google, iHeartRadio, and wherever you find podcasts. Last week I talked about criticism and controversy over various movies that are on the way onto movie screens or on your television. And then I had some of the same kind of controversy and things going on once again. I guess the fall is just the time just to be critical of everything. Anything that's mainstream, movies, music, TV, and radio. Right now, a lot of criticism, a lot of attacking, a lot of negativity, or, maybe not really constructive criticism going on right now either. So last week, I focused on 4 different projects going on in the movies with Blonde, Amsterdam, Don't Worry Darling, and The Woman King. Well, this week, now we have 4 new culprits to talk about when it comes to where things are now with October starting off with a whole lot of bunk, okay? You're talking about bros once again in the headlines after how things went with the movie. Then you have White Lives Matter and Kanye West, which we'll have to talk about that. We'll talk about that first. The Dahmer documentary, or the Dahmer series from Netflix. And how Chris Pratt voiced Mario in Super Mario Brothers in the trailer. This is all the outrage and ostracization. Ostracization. I had to find something illiterate that goes with an O, and I did to go with October, and there you go. So this is it. People just can't be satisfied with anything. Now, I'm not going to take one side or the other as to who is right or who's wrong, especially when it comes to the first subject, White Lives Matter. So Kanye West, who has always been prone to find a chance to do something publicly to get attention on him, when it comes to whether he has music going on or not, his stem players being used or not, whether he's doing gospel, whether he's, breaking it with Kim Kardashian and dissing Pete Davidson and all these other things. Kanye West knows how to keep his name in the headline regularly. And so he got into this as well, where he went to, let me get into the story of what actually happened. So Kanye West went to a Paris fashion show on Monday, and he was wearing a black shirt with the words in white Lives Matter, across the back with a photo of the Pope on its front, which drew a threat of physical violence, according to therap.com. Kanye spoke with Tucker Carlson on Thursday night, saying that he received the phone call after the surprise show in France, presenting for the rapper's Yeezy fashion collection. And this is after Kanye West was already going after the Gap for his Yeezy collection, and the fact that he was going to leave the Gap altogether for them producing his line of products, his fashion line. And then we all go back to about a decade ago, and Sway said, why don't you just do it on your own? Why do you have to work with anybody? All these kind of things. As I said, you can find numerous things that Kanye West keeps himself in the headlines on a regular basis. But that is something to be said about those in the media when you need to go ahead and keep yourself prominent. There's one thing if you're an influencer on social media and how you keep yourself relevant, because there's just new content every day. But in this society now, celebrities or musicians or people in entertainment also having to play the role of influencer. They must do things much more rapidly and much more often. Frequency and speed is really important. And the difference is that with the bigger audience out there, and an audience and the public with a lot of executives and a lot of people that are very politically driven and charged, that are going to attack anything that goes on that goes against what they feel. And that goes on both sides of the argument. With Kanye, he is accompanied by a conservative talk show host, Candace Owens of the Daily Wire, who wears an alternate white shirt with the words White Lives Matter on it. Kind of looking like a Frankie Goes to Hollywood kind of feel from 1985. Relax, remember that? Which was used as a political statement then, if you might remember, where there were women that were wearing shirts in front of the Queen, protesting missiles being housed, nuclear missiles being housed in England, by I guess it was by the USA, because they needed to have missiles at the ready in case of a Cold War starting up and a nuclear war, a nuclear strike against the USSR, Soviet Union. So now, the event at this Paris fashion show was attended by Beyonce, Rihanna, Angelina Jolie, Lauryn Hill, Naomi Campbell, Emily Ratajkowski, Gisele Bündchen, who's also been in the headlines now that she's about to divorce Tom Brady, Bella Hadid. This has featured a Sunday service style musical number, including a children's choir, and among the singers was West's daughter, Northwest, daughter with Kim Kardashian. And then debate immediately happened once people saw this as to whether it was some kind of marketing stunt or just him trolling. Now, the Rap.com article talks about that Kanye has had a well-documented history of mental illness. He has shown himself to time and time again promote extremely conservative values and ideologues. Okay. And then there were comments afterwards about the outrage, the backlash against Kanye West for what he did. You had Jaden Smith, son of Will Smith, denouncing the move. And, quote, he does not have the full support of the youth. And he put up tweets saying that Black Lives Matter, and I don't care whose it is. If I don't feel the message, I'm out. Then you had Jamel Hill, former ESPN host, right, or anchor for SportsCenter, said it was dangerously dumb. And then a writer, Meacham Merriweather, says Kanye shows y'all and tells y'all he doesn't care about the black community, and still y'all be right. They're at Sunday service buying every G.I. Joe boot and every piece of raggedy fabric he drops. So there's that. And then Rolling Stone, and like there was no shortage of finding articles that were blasting Kanye West over this whole story. Especially after the fact where it happened on Monday, and then he goes on Tucker Carlson to talk about it after that. On Instagram, he made the point of this, quote, everyone knows that Black Lives Matter was a scam. Now it's over. You're welcome. And that's the reason he did it. And regardless of what people think, there's been a lot of talk about this. There's been the argument, and I'm just a messenger. Don't attack me, because there's been the talk of the Black Lives Matter nonprofit has not really shown any form of advocacy by people of color in an attempt to discredit the BLM movement as a whole, because of the fact that they're saying that there are people that of $68 million, I think it is, that were raised for Black Lives Matter, that the black community as a whole has not seen a dime of it, and has been used for other ulterior motives, if you want to say that. So Kanye West defended the use of the White Lives Matter tagline, suggesting a long-winded monologue that the idea for the shirt stemmed from a, quote, gut instinct, a connection to God and just brilliance. He says, quote, the answer to why I wrote White Lives Matter on a shirt is because they do. It's the obvious. And there was a number of things that he said out there that really got people all up and at it. One person on Twitter, Nikki McCann Ramirez, points to the fact that he pivots to a bizarre attack on Lizzo, calling the promotion of unhealthy weight by the media demonic and akin to genocide against black people. Now, I mean, we know that we always hear about Lizzo when it comes to the body positivity movement, and the fact that there are going to be those people that are going to go ahead and not be worried about, again, American in general. People are not worried so much about body positivity when it comes to, like, if it's going to affect their health. Like, I think about that myself because of the fact that, you know, I'm a heavier person and I've been trying to lose weight, and I've kept trying to lose weight from where I was at a really bad spot where I could very well not be here if I didn't lose the weight in the first place. Okay. And I still have more to go. It's just a lot. Now, more condemnation at the Yeezy Fashion Show. Vogue editor Gabriella Carefa Johnson called the shirts an incredibly irresponsible and dangerous act. The t-shirts this band conceived, produced, and shared with the world are pure violence. Shirts are violence. And there is no excuse, there is no art here. And then somebody asked the mother of Ahmaud Arbery, who was one of the people attacked, which struck up a really a strong BLM movement, that they condemn West actions. And actually, Kanye West had previously donated $2 million to the families of Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd, and Breonna Taylor. And she said, quote, "This mockery of the Black Lives Matter movement and how is now the denunciation of the movement as some sort of hoax flies directly in the face of what he said." And so there's a lot there that really pissed people off. But, you know, it's one of those things that if this was what, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago, this kind of shock publicity right here, it would have gotten some people really up and at it. But the truth is, people are just getting in on here, and the idea will be to try to cancel him once again. But he's doing this because he's able to go ahead and never be canceled. It doesn't matter how he's treated Kim Kardashian, for good or worse, what his music is like, what he's done with his fashion, what he's done with, you know, aligning themselves with certain people that absolutely everybody, that there are a lot of people that do not like. And because of his associations with certain people, you know, they're going to attack him. And without me going into any subjects of free speech or political ideology and things like that, I just don't give a shit. We used to have political statements like this all the time. But the thing is now is that social media has truly made it difficult. And social media has been, you know, people have capitulated to people on social media because of the magnitude of the audience that can see something that happens. Because before social media, you wouldn't get this level of outrage right away. But when you can see things so quickly come in, people could just go ahead and attack immediately. And you can tell there is a particular establishment, the media establishment that's out there, the people that are making big, you know, that are run by corporations, okay, when it comes to movies, music, TV, radio, all this. Digital news outlets, newspapers, all corporate owned, right? What you got to say to yourself is that you see all these things that are going on. And there's just a certain thing where people have to attack a certain way. And they're not allowed just to go and just make their words known. There has to be something else behind it. It's funny how people like to go and use words and think that if they're going to gaslight somebody or gaslight a situation, people just want to find the right word that's going to absolutely just piss somebody off and basically like put a hole in their heart, burn a stake in them. People think that words really can do that. And what I've realized with all this shit going on is that I realize it doesn't really matter. I don't think anybody cares. There's a lot of people that don't care. When you hear about Kanye doing this, listen, we didn't watch the fashion show. We were not, you know, I'm not consumed on his clothing. I'll listen to his albums. And then when they're kind of done, I kind of like move on to the next thing. But really, for someone that's been able to go ahead and continuously work and collaborate with other artists because of, you know, his production savvy, is the music he has put out, like a good bulk of his catalog, people do praise a lot. And every time he puts an album out, it's going to make some difference. But everyone is just looking at this and saying, you know what? The Hollywood celebrities, the Hollywood fixtures out there, the names out there, no matter who they are, and the people that are behind these big corporate, magazines, publications, the media out there, and all these different actors, actresses that must capitulate to the higher ups, the powers that be, because they have no choice. They made a deal with the devil. They're in this business where they are. And for Kanye West, he's been bucking the system. And he can do that. And so far, he has not been canceled. So everyone's going to outrage about this once again. And you know what's going to happen? Nothing. Because nothing ever happens. But people get caught up on this. And then the worst part is people that are politically charged that'll watch like the cable news on the weekdays, they're the ones who are going to go and take this here and they're going to outrage. They're going to be like, this side's going to say this and this side's going to say that. And I could care two shits. It doesn't matter. And for those that think, oh, this is not art, this is violence, to each his own. I'm not going to go ahead and subscribe to the fact that I need to go ahead and feel like that I'm going to only agree with one side of any kind of feelings or opinions or thoughts on anything. It doesn't matter. He got publicity. You know what? I don't think anybody would have cared about that Yeezy fashion show if he didn't do that. What it would have been? The same bullshit as over and over? Okay, he's leaving Gap. He's going to do what he's going to do. And there's going to be a lot of people that don't give a shit about the message, okay? All they know is the message doesn't matter. But he just trolled the fuck out of a lot of people and basically put a middle finger at Hollywood. A middle finger at everybody. He doesn't care. And think about the fact that this guy, if he wants to, can still run for president. And there are people that will vote for him. Okay? Don't deny it. There might still be people that will absolutely vote for him because it's a change. Because people don't want to be subscribed or held down to one person that thinks one way or the other. Because the problem is we're kind of tired of that. People really are enjoying what this digital disruption does. This digital disruption that I've been talking about for almost 4 years in this program. Starting off with it was called Creative Not Corporate. And into the Broadcasters Podcast, I've talked about this because it's been this free spirit of the internet. Now, social media has created a place where people can go ahead and give feedback on all the things we see on the internet. And we can see things much like how news is given in very short, compartmentalized, easy to absorb pieces of video, audio, or text. And we see that. And then people can go ahead and criticize and complain and find a way to go ahead and get their word out there. Like, honestly, in the world of TikTok, I don't see it. Instagram, maybe. Like, there's people out there that are going to have their own opinions and thoughts, but it's like, I look at what's out there, and I mean, how many people are going to afford Yeezy clothing that are going to actually care about that whole thing? They're going to give a shit about what music he's going to put out. What's the next record he's going to put out? Will another Donda be coming out? It'll be pretty good. Something like that, right? Other than that, no. It doesn't matter what else he does. Does anybody really care about what he's doing with Kim Kardashian and picking on Pete Davidson? Hell no. No one does. And for those that think that we're all following what the mainstream establishment, the counterculture, you think they were watching what the mainstream, the media establishment's doing right now? What it is? No, they don't give a shit. And somebody might talk about it because they're going to use it as a political narrative, and they can do that, and they're all going to do that because there's some of that all embedded on social media anyway. There's a part of that. But then there's a great part of people out there that we want to be entertained. And, okay, shock value in this story. You think he wasn't going to go ahead and get called out on this? He wasn't going to go ahead and get caught up? Listen, he wore a MAGA hat in the White House, okay? And then he brings on Candace Owens, making sure he's pictured and photographed with her at the show. Candace Owens, who he called out on Twitter and says, I like how she thinks. right? It's a statement against against those where the black community is divided. Let's just say it like that. And some people want to go and put it across political divides, but it's not. Like, the funny thing is that the establishment of media out there, they want to go ahead and make black people portrayed as one way, right? But it's not. Like, I look on TikTok, and when I look, well, remember, I look in my backyard, and I see people who are black, of various cultures, creeds, ethnicities, and a lot of beautiful women. In my own opinion, of course, I've gone after Dominican, Bahamian, Haitian, Jamaican, Cuban, Puerto Rican. Hey, just saying, Dominican. Seeing, the representation of black people in my community, and knowing that the race shit doesn't matter. Putting a color on somebody does not matter. And also, seeing on TikTok, especially, when you want to talk about how there's white people that might have a particular way they might culturally appropriate, same thing goes for black people. Because you'll see people of various notes. Like, when I see black people on TikTok and their humor goes a certain route, and it's very much not the norm that you see of what the portrayal is, right? That stereotype. Or seeing how many black people that love rock music, or punk, or they're emo kids, and all this kind of stuff. Like, I love it. The thing is, social media, for the good of it, we actually get a great representation of what really people are. And honestly, it's nice to see all the walks of life that are different, and they're not succumb to some stereotype. Like, that's the best part. Knowing who are wrestling fans out there, who are sports fans, who are gaming fans, who are whatever. And, seeing beautiful women of all walks of life on there, and looking at what people's opinions are and what people are talking about, and actual discourse and debate going on over there, especially on TikTok. It's really great stuff. And see what they have now with all these different rooms for Clubhouse or Twitter, or LinkedIn has audio events now. They finally put that up. Or Facebook has audio rooms, things like that. Because you can still have dialogue. You can still have people that are talking, communicating with each other, connecting with each other, bonding with each other. Not this dividing kind of thing that's going on with the media establishment that's out there, with every TV show they want to put on, with every movie they want to put on, because they feel like they need to go ahead and use this archaic, antiquated form of placating stereotypes. Like, people really matter when it comes to Hispanic Heritage Month, which they split over 2 months, or Black History Month, or AAVE month, or whatever it is, right? All these different things that, everybody has to have a month, and there are certain people that need to be treated a certain way. It's like, there's all these things that are trying to be instilled on everyday people that they don't really care about. The same thing goes with their media. The same thing goes with the music they listen to. You want to go and keep changing things up. You want to remake shows. You want to remake things that there wasn't anything wrong with them. Like some people have said, it's a creative bankruptcy that's out there. You see new content and you see what comes to the top and people are watching. And how many times is this something that's really some kind of politically charged kind of thing? It's not. Really, do we see anything where, are there people that are really caught up on shows like Euphoria or House of Dragon or, Fleabag? I don't know, just different shows that are on streaming and people are watching them, and it's not necessarily because of any particular thing about, that they're going to change, something here to create some kind of, this is the way that things are supposed to be. And not really with the way things are. Because that's the thing. Anything that's established, big corporate media, they're going to create a picture of, honestly, what the writers are going to be told. Or the producers, directors. They're going to create this sense of what reality is for them. It's a false sense of reality. On social media and through all these content creators we watch on a regular basis, we see something that's much more real, much more authentic. And people respond to that. And I'm not I'm not disagreeing or criticizing when people want to go and put some content out there and they want to try to make something happen. Listen, Bros, right? The Billy Eichner movie that came out last week, $22 million budget. First weekend, $4.8 million in the box office. So it didn't do well. And the movie Smile, which had a great marketing campaign where you see these weird smiling people across on baseball games and other live events and all, creeping out people. Horror movie. Well, we haven't had many horror movies. Well, this all of a sudden did well. Smile got $19 million in the box office. And so you can try things that are diverse. You can try things that are going to be pushy, but like, look, you have two movies that are going to be gay rom-com. One is coming out, I think it's later this month, and that is, spoiler alert, and Jim Parsons of the Big Bang Theory, Sheldon Cooper, is featured in the role in that movie as a love interest. And Billy Eichner did the same thing here. Now, there's a story about what went wrong with Bros. Okay. Besides the fact that Billy Eichner went on the Twitter and said it's because people are homophobic and straight people didn't want to see my movie. No matter how good the movie did when it came to, oh, look, Rotten Tomatoes gave me a good rating. Look, IMDb gave me a good rating. Yeah, because they're placated to you. It's Hollywood. Now, I'm not judging anybody that went to go see the movie or not, but there's something to be said about you're going to do a Hollywood rom-com. Do you want to have with two gay people? Sure. But it's one of those things where they like to talk about, oh, well, underrepresented communities. And Billy Eichner, to his credit, did try to do that. But here's what people were saying that was actually really common. Because it wasn't like Billy Eichner in his messages, when he was going on his on the street segment and telling people, are you going to go see Bros? He's pressuring. Instead of promoting and letting people know, hey, come watch the movie. It's entertaining. It's funny. But they missed that part. Like, even when they did the trailer, which was the same trailer over and over for like 6 months, I saw. The same one joke the guy in the club says about when he sees this, the hunk of a guy that he's interested in, right? And then it's like, all the other things that are going on is within his job of all these different people underrepresented that are featured in the movie and what he's doing in his job. And he's juggling that and all this. I didn't watch the movie. It's not a kind of movie I want to watch because I don't like rom-coms. And yeah, you know what? It's not my kind of movie because I'm not gay, but you know, I don't watch a lot of content where I don't watch movies that are just completely that. Like, I mean, listen, it's fine. You know, I've seen more than enough content out there where I've seen, you know, scenes between two people, either lesbians or two guys or whatever. And I've seen that all many times. But sometimes it's like, you know, yeah, it's kind of just pushing the envelope. I remember the movie, the series Hollywood that Ryan Murphy put out. And I'm like, okay, there's a lot of gay action going on in this. And it does, you know, that's part of the story. But it's like, oh, this one guy wants to go ahead and rape this other guy in the bathroom, like, or whatever it is. I'm like, man, it's just a little too much. It's like overkill on it. It's like, sure, I know there were guys, young actors in Hollywood, these guys that wanted to get good roles. And yeah, they go ahead and like, they had to go and have sex with the producers and directors of these big movie moguls, these moguls of these studios. Yeah, because they were closeted gay. And so that kind of action went on, and that's fine. So the Wrap put the story out here about why you shouldn't read too much into the gay rom-com's weak box office. Hollywood rarely acknowledges underrepresented communities, and when they do, that representation has an absurd amount of pressure placed on it. I picked this story because the writer here, Alonso Duralde, makes a good point. Because we don't need to go and talk about the fact that, hey, listen, the people are homophobic or they don't like something that's gay. That's fine, whatever. I mean, part of it is because there's just things that go on. Listen, and if you let me just say it like this. There's an audience that would go see a movie that's a gay rom-com, just depending on. But let me just tell you like this. So we're going on now, 16 years ago, there was a radio podcast network I was running and I was program director for a year and a half, called Why Not Radio. And that closed off on Halloween of 2006. And let me tell you, for all the different events I used to do for adult entertainment, the porn industry, if you will, the digital side of porn, the online part, not the video part, but the online portion. If I told you, and even back then, and I'm sure it's the same now, gay porn is extremely popular. It just is. And if I could tell you about, compared to all the women that were out there, all the different porn stars were out there, then you had to go and look at the amount of gays, the amount of gay guys like twinks that were out there. I mean, just overloaded at all these events. And I was like, I get the appeal. I get why people will want to be into it. Guys, girls, or whoever they want, because it's also behind closed doors. Like, whatever you're doing, watching to spank yourself off, that's your own thing. But what they're trying to do here, I mean, when you're doing rom-coms, you want to have people that are much more appealing. And listen, Billy Eichner's not. I mean, this is more of like a fantasy for him because, maybe he does get guys like a particular hunks or whatever because he's of a particular status. But what I'm saying is, Billy Eichner's character, and first of all, however he portrays it or not, he's a dick. That's what he is. Okay. I think he was very good. I watched a lot of him in American Horror Story. He was good on that show. He fit a role. But let me tell you, that guy's a dick. He just has that role. It's like, having a Louis Litt from Suits. When you put him on whatever show he's on, Rick Hoffman, right? And that guy can be on whatever show you want. He can be on Billions. He can be on, Law and Order Criminal Intent, whatever. Or Law and Order SVU. That guy just plays a dick. He just does. There are just certain people that play pricks, and that's what they're good at. And it doesn't make sense for you to go and put Billy Eichner as that character as like this hopeless love interest. He's playing a part that's not even, he's just not that good an actor to play that. When Billy Eichner's been acting under the shows like American Horror Story, he plays himself. He's a caricature. He might amplify his character, who he is, but honestly, he's like that. I'll tell you, Billy Eichner is this generation's Andy Dick, or an earlier generation's Paul Lynde. He is. He's flamboyant. He's got this kind of attitude. He just has a way of just, rubbing people the wrong way. And then the thing too is that when Hollywood needs to get behind something and they need to have somebody, it's a represented movie, people need to go see this. You need to see it. Like, we don't want to go to the movies to watch something that we're forced to watch, that we have to watch. That's not going to work that way. And Alonzo Duralde makes the point. So now here's what happens. So Alonzo here makes the point and says, the marketing was too focused on its status as the first major studio LGBTQ rom-com, which I learned Love Simon's one of the first ones that actually holds that distinction before this, but he says it was too white. The poster was off-putting. Yeah, the poster was stupid. Two guys, with hands in their pants and their back pockets. Didn't make sense. The title was vague. Yeah, bad title. Bad title. Billy Eichner and Luke McFarlane aren't big enough names to open a movie. And did he really have any chemistry? From what I saw, it didn't look like they had chemistry. It felt like it was kind of off-putting. These guys, you'd want to have that part. Like that the romantic love interest, no matter what, a rom-com is still supposed to work like a rom-com. And it doesn't matter if it's Amy Schumer that's in it or, Kristen Wiig or, Cameron Diaz if you're going back a while. The other thing, too, which I didn't really think about, but he's probably not wrong, people don't go to rom-coms during Halloween season. People don't go to rom-coms full stop. Yeah. It is kind of true. I don't remember often where there's certain movies around Christmas time. Yeah. Popcorn season, January, February, spring, summer. Yeah. But if you're going to go do any movies during Halloween season, yeah, you're doing horror movies. That's what's going to sell. Like right now, after Smile, Halloween Ends is coming out, and that's going to make bank. And he goes on to say that the reasons seem endless. Sometimes they were thoughtful, sometimes. And even Alonzo here says that Billy Eichner, whether you see him doing Billy on the Street or Difficult People, then you know he doesn't sink quietly into the sunset. He's easily perturbed. He's easily upset. That's not good for somebody that's going to be in Hollywood. That's going to be easily triggered. So he goes on and says, quote, on Twitter, even with glowing reviews, great Rotten Tomatoes score, an A cinema score, etc. Listen, those are critics. Critics that are going to praise this movie. Of course, your peers are going to praise this movie because that's what they always do. Certain movies are going to be given a certain route, right? They say stray people, especially in certain parts of the country, just didn't show up for Bros. And that's disappointing, but it is what it is. Yeah, so he's trying to say Flyover America wasn't going to go see Bros. Well, look, except for one theater I heard that was trying to go ahead and not run the movie at all, as far as I'm concerned, how many screens had this movie available? Let me look at that part. That's an interesting tidbit I want to go and find out. This movie, when it came out, Bros was put out widescreen release, 3,350 screens, 3,350 theaters. Meanwhile, Don't Worry, Darling had the most screens at 4,121. Smile, 3,650. Woman King, 3,504. So you bet your bottom dollar in every major market, wherever they have movies, Bros was running. Widescreen release with plenty of showing. But the movie performed bad. $4.8 million for its first week. And if you gross per theater, by the way, I put that as well. It grossed $1,449 per theater. And Don't Worry, Darling, which was second place, $1,662. Not good. Bros was a little bit of a gamble. And then he writes another tweet, Billy Eichner, saying, quote, everyone who isn't, in caps, a homophobic weirdo should go see Bros tonight. You will have a blast. You're not convincing anybody by saying that. Now, we know that rom-coms can actually work because we know Lost City, which I walked out on about 40 minutes in. Once Brad Pitt's character got killed, I wasn't laughing at all in that movie, and I left. I got the fuck out. $191 million worldwide. Well, you know what? Like I said, rom-coms are not my thing. I went because there was nothing else to watch that weekend, so I decided to try it. You know? What are you going to do? So the other thing, too, which didn't help either, that Universal Pictures, they moved the movie from August, which normally does work for movies like this, into September 30th. Because Mission Impossible 7 moved to next year. And then if you wanted to go and watch, anybody wanted to be watching Halloween movies, well, you already had Smile and Hocus Pocus 2 on Disney+. Like, there was wrong time of year. Absolutely right. If it would have been done in August, yeah, would have been fine. And there was room in August. But I don't know. I don't know why it would have been done. Now, while Eichner and McFarlane may lack marquee count, co-producer and co-star Guy Branum aptly observed on Twitter that while earlier Apatow movies surrounded newcomers with familiar faces, you had Amy Schumer in Trainwreck that had Tilda Swinton, John Cena, Bill Hader, and LeBron James providing additional star wattage. Bros populated the entire cast with LGBTQ plus performers, right? That nobody knew. Okay? You had Branum, T.S. Madison, Miss Lawrence, Dot Marie Jones, Eve Lundley, Jim Rash. And by the way, the only names I really knew were Guillermo Diaz, who was on Scandal for all those years, and Harvey Fierstein and Amanda Bierce. Yeah, no star power for a movie like this. And they're absolutely right. Like I forgot, Trainwreck definitely had a number of notable people in that movie. Same thing with Lost City. You had all these all these other appearances by other celebrities that were in it. Like, let's not forget that with Channing Tatum and Sandra Bullock at the front and center, you still had Brad Pitt, and you had Harry Potter, whatever his name is. Daniel Radcliffe. Damn it. I always forget. I never watched Harry Potter, so sorry about that. And then he asked the question, why aren't there more openly queer megastars? And that much of the underlying anxiety about how much money this movie does or does not make ties in the notion that its performance will directly impact what LGBTQ plus productions get made next. Queer cinema has already had a rich and varied history and has existed with some exceptions almost entirely in the world of the art house. Right, they're independent movies for the most part. If Hollywood studios make queer movies with all the frequency of appearances of Halley's Comet, it places undue pressure on those films to be all things to all people. Right. It has to. You can't put movies out that are going to be segmented or narrowcast. You have to make it so it's going to reach to a wide audience, and not like what Billy Eichner says, that you should watch it, that everybody should watch it. It's like required watching. Like we're in class and we have to watch this movie as part of a book report. No. Now, he does try to put a bright spot on this, but because he says there's quite a few movies that become cult status after the fact. Box office failures that eventually found their way into the hearts and minds of a broad audience, and the overwhelmingly positive feedback from viewers who have actually seen Bros suggests that we haven't seen the last of it. And that very well can happen, because that's happened a lot before. So, it's not as if, audiences can't adapt, but you still need to go ahead and you need to, we know we're trying to be an accepting community out here, right? You consumers out there, people watching entertainment. It's obvious that Hollywood is going to continue to push down certain movies that might not be something that all audiences are going to love, but they're going to try to go after people anyway to watch these movies because they think that's what it's going to be. All right, a couple of things I want to bring up. Next subject in the outrage and ostracization discussion. I always hear about ostracizing, but I never use the word in that form. Ostracization. Let's talk about Chris Pratt, because there is a lot of bunk over him right now because people are questioning his voice of Mario in the Super Mario Brothers movie. And his voice changes from, quote, slightly racist to normal speaking voice. So the first trailer has come out. The bottom line is, while people are really excited to see a Super Mario Brothers movie like this, where it's going to be done like almost like it'll be animated, but like a CGI kind of feel to it. The thing was, people saw the trailer, very much a teaser, and Twitter blew up. So here we go. Everybody's attacking this right now. Gizmodo editor James Whitbrook said the voice that Chris Pratt uses is normal speaking voice with a slightly racist accent. Vulture film critic Allison Wilmore, put up a screenshot from The Sopranos, and Billy Eichner, while he was still critiquing people about why don't you watch this damn movie, he got in as well on it. So the movie's coming up April 7th, 2023. It also features Anya Taylor-Joy, Jack Black, Keegan-Michael Key, Charlie Day, Seth Rogen, and Fred Armisen. Yeah, pretty big setup for this movie. So there's people on Twitter that go along. Another person with a blue check mark. It's just an incredibly timid way to make movies despite all the success and the success of Mario. People say, I know it's easy to take shots at Pratt, but I think casting was symptomatic of a larger studio problem. At some point, someone said, we need a name to play Mario. A name. And Matt says Mario is the name. Even people who have never played a video game know who Mario is. But that's that whole thing where all these animated features, they feel compelled. They have to have some celebrity voice to do the movie because that'll kind of get like an old audience to watch. And so everybody getting upset on this and attacking him. Now, there wasn't that many people they focused on here that said it, but people got upset. And that decided to get people all worked up on that. What comes up next? Like the movies, is it done already? So what are they going to do next? It all continues. The next thing, and this is going back a couple of weeks, but still, we should bring this up anyway. The Dahmer series on Netflix. And where it was put originally in the section for Netflix viewers as an LGBTQ categorized program. And the LGBTQ plus community got upset by this distinction because it was a serial killer who was in fact LGBTQ. Well, I mean, don't technically, he was gay. And he targeted LGBTQ people. That was the whole idea. Well, even with all this going on, it did well. When you talk about people that are watching stuff and streaming, just this past week, Dahmer, Monster, the Jeffrey Dahmer story, delivered Netflix's biggest week of viewership since the final episode of Stranger Things. Season 4 dropped in July. 300 million hours viewed between September 26th and October 2nd. But then there's a lot being said about where Ryan Murphy, who's been producing a lot of great stuff for FX, right? American Crime Story, American Horror Story. Then he comes over and works with Netflix. And that Ryan Murphy has had some struggling with some of the 3 limited series that he put out, Hollywood, Halston, and Monster. And another one's coming out called The Watcher, slated for release later this month. And then he did a musical film in 2020 called The Prom. So the attack on that was also brought in as well. And also you just have to realize that with Ryan Murphy, you talk about a guy that is never afraid to go and, not include something which is gay, LGBTQ, queer, in various roles in his programming, or talking about stories that historically have some kind of a context with the gay community. He does it all the time. All the time. And so there's no surprise with that, but it doesn't even matter. Like, certain people are just going to eat their own. In that establishment, the whole point is that when you're a creator working in that corporate environment with all these different people that expect you to fall, well, you need to overrepresent all these different communities because this is the way we want to do it. We want these movies, we want these shows, we want to remake this content because we have intellectual property, the digital IP. And we're going to make something that's going to represent this new community because people are telling us this is the way we need to do it. And it's because it is this stunted thinking that just makes more people just go over to streaming or to somewhere else. Or go to social media, or go to YouTube or TikTok and consume media there. When it's independent creators doing all this stuff, there's like obviously some bigger names on social media, but sure. But I'm just saying, some of them just became overnight sensations. But when you think about, this is the difference, okay? The greatest example I can give you about where Hollywood doesn't understand. Remember when Hollywood put all the money into the project, which had the production value of Netflix and the length of YouTube. Remember Jeffrey Katzenberg and Meg Whitman raising $1.75 billion from investors to launch Quibi? Quibi was supposed to be a game changer, a disruption, much like what YouTube and TikTok is now, and what Netflix is now. Problem is, they wanted to do their own kind of content over there, and it failed miserably. So they tried to do that. They wanted to put out certain content that was over there that was going to be what Hollywood could control. They're going to create this short form content. And it doesn't matter if people were still, home because of the pandemic. I think even if it would have stayed around, it wasn't going to hold on. It was not going to hold on and do well anyway, period. I don't think anyone was going to pay, $8, $10 a subscription for that. No. But this is the mindset of what is going on. These corporate media companies struggling with streaming right now, struggling with trying to keep enough content out there to satiate the audience out there. Because we already know that people on Netflix, they're starting to go ahead and bail out. And Disney Plus might want to bail out. Like certain projects that are going on, they're just like, okay, doesn't matter. Like there's only so much streaming that's out there for people that will want to go ahead and buy it. And when it comes to cable, also dying media, broadcast TV the same. If it didn't have football, I don't know what else it would do. But I'll tell you that it's all these different areas of the digital disruption where anything that's on social media, short form, long form, the production can be done on YouTube or TikTok now, or you can watch on other platforms. They're kicking ass. They're taking away eyeballs from everybody else that's out there. What are you going to do next? Not much you can do. Okay, so I got a handful of stories left to go and wrap things up here that I want to bring up. There was one story that came up from The Guardian I wanted to bring up. There's endless choice, they say, but you're not listening. And that fans are starting to abandon Spotify for the love of music. So they say that former streaming service subscribers have started ditching ModCon for MP3, CDs, and other DIY music formats, as if people are going to go backward. And so one person they talked to mentioned that this one girl that they talked to in particular, Meg Letham, says that she was looking for a soundtrack for the day, and nothing was perfect for the moment. And she looked through playlist after playlist, and she hated how music was being used in her life, and that using music rather than having it be its own experience. What kind of music am I going to use to set a mood for the day? What am I going to use to enjoy my walk? So she decided to go ahead and find a way to go and use traditional music, as if other people are going to be doing that. And that's fine. One person they talked to deleted his streaming accounts, bought a used iPod on eBay for £40. This is the UK story. And this guy actually said, quote, if I didn't gel with an album or an artist's work at first, I tended not to go back to it. And that streaming was actually contributing to some degree of dismissal of new music. Even with digital downloads, he tended to give music more time and attention. So there's that story. They're saying that, they're going along and string that there's more of this going on. And that conversations around digital marketplaces shape listening have long focused on the unbundling of the album. And so there's just some people that feel like they want to do that, go back to records and all that stuff, and that's fine. And then they go into the different ways you can still find new music. You could use Bandcamp, you could use the human algorithm, your local record store, online radio, artist interviews, and the YouTube algorithm. If you want to go into that instead of going to Spotify or Pandora or whatever you use to listen to music. That's the idea they're trying to bring up here. And then across media platforms, there was a survey that came out that I wanted to bring up from Variety that talks about media platforms and who's watching what. Now, we're talking about various forms of visual, okay? 15 to 29 years old in this particular demographic divide report. They show that which did you listen to or use at least 30 minutes over the last week? 4% said cable, 3% said broadcast TV, 3% said podcast, 5% music, 7% gaming, 7%, 6% video on demand or streaming services. Social media, 7%, and streaming video on demand, 5%. And of course, when you get older, cable usage becomes higher. And so does broadcast cable, things like that. Plus the news, they asked, okay, of those that watch national news most days or watch local news most days, 15 to 29 years old, 21% will watch local news, 17% will watch national news. And stays similar, goes up for 30 to 44. The highest is 56% watch national news, 60 plus years old, and 64% watch local news, 60 plus years old. And everything goes the same way. Like with radio, same thing. For younger people, they don't listen a lot to the radio. They say the streaming services are better than the radio, and traditional radio plays the same songs too often. But which everybody can agree on at a pretty high rate. They mentioned in the story how radio is another medium that may need to embrace other formats to maintain its long-term health. While half of consumers over 45 agree they listen to the radio, only a quarter of 15 to 29s do, with younger consumers more likely to prefer streaming music services. And then the question, if you had the choice between YouTube and TikTok, and you could watch it all day long and not get bored, among younger consumers, 15 to 29, 48% agree with YouTube, 35% agree with TikTok. As I said, as the audience dwindles, the older crowd comes in, the next generation is not subscribing or placating to what's being put out there in terms of content. I mean, the streaming service is one thing because of the convenience, but these big Hollywood types, these big corporate giants, what are they going to do to keep people engaged and involved? They're just rehashing the same kind of stuff for a new generation, thinking that's going to help. But it's not. We should know better. Now, there was a story that Fred Jacobs, who I always like to kind of quote from sometimes, he furthers the story about radio and its losing of younger people. Horizon Media put out a study that says that 91% of 18 to 25-year-olds say there is no such thing as mainstream pop culture. And they showed that with traditional media, Gen Zs are lighter users of TV, magazines, newspapers, and out-of-home media compared to adults overall. Now, they're heavy consumers of radio and audio in general. Gen Z is 24% more likely to listen to the radio or audio media than a typical U.S. adult. Meanwhile, for television, Gen Zs are 40% less likely to be viewers. The explanation for radio and audio's overperformance is because of its connection to listeners. And the clue comes from social media, where Horizon says Gen Z is spending more time than ever, but its usage is also evolving as users look for deeper engagement in online communities. Gen Z wants more intimate, community-oriented experiences than what traditional social networks and the other media channels tend to offer. They want personalization, following them offline too. And the passions that Gen Z really enjoys, they intersect and connect with, are gaming, entertainment, education, fashion, and beauty. Gen Zs represent an estimated $360 billion in buying power. So radio needs their money. And then Fred Jacobs talks about this on his radio blog, jacobsmedia.com. And there was a TikTok that, if you can look on the story, if you look on the link that I put over on broadcasterspodcast.com in the show description, there is a TikTok video where there's a young girl that's in their car, and the caption says, "Me trying to give the radio a chance." And it's hilarious. They get it down pat. So Fred Jacobs says that there is a fatal mistake radio continues to make by not making an effort to reach the younger generation of truly amazing young people and voracious consumers. They may not be as reachable as many radio people imagine, Because their narrative is they've grown up with radio, so why on earth will they start listening now? They're digital natives. There's a couple of things about teens and radio that Edison data from 2019 suggests. Their radio's roadmap to Gen Z. They pointed out that a majority of 13 to 24-year-olds in the U.S. are reached daily by AM/FM radio, spend half the time listening to AM/FM radio than 13 years old plus, and Gen Z listens to AM/FM when they can in their cars almost half the time ahead of streaming audio on YouTube. And when it comes to Gen Z's favorite brands, YouTube is the most popular at 86.23%. Google second, 83.7 or 83.87%. So there's a thought process that, with radio, there are enough programmers and marketers out there and a lot of research that should change the game. And so there's an opportunity right now. But radio needs to understand how to attract younger listeners again, which is what they were the best at. Which is why I was such a great adopter of radio myself. But it's this ongoing thing that's going on here that hopefully things will change. Like, I always think radio's got a chance to do a lot of things when it comes to representation, when it comes to adopting younger listeners, younger consumers, and using social media to help out. But they're not figuring it out yet. Because there's no support on the radio side. No real support for its talent, no real support for resources, nothing. Most radio people that are online, they're doing it on their own with the permission of their management team. And that's what it comes down to. It's a shame. Anyway, I'm going to leave it right there. That's the show for this week. Thanks for listening in, finding it as you always do. And until next week, come back for another Broadcasters podcast. And remember that content is king, and the control of your content is in your hands.
Thank you for listening to the Broadcasters podcast. Find all the links to subscribe to the show by going to broadcasterspodcast.com. And don't forget to check out the King of Podcasts wrestling program, the Wrestling is Real podcast, exclusively at wrestlingisreal.com.